Hi. It feels so weird again to record the podcast on my own. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, you have to listen to it. I had another amazing vet on the podcast, Dr. We had so much fun. I think we spent almost an hour recording together, and it was just, it felt so alive speaking to someone else on the camera rather than just talking myself. I am passionate about the subjects I talk about, so that's fine. I do love doing this, and I love getting off my chest everything I want and everything I can teach. But I also really like the format of interviewing someone because I'm so curious about how everybody else is handling it in this industry as well, right? It's fascinating how different we all are and how we all manage it. And next month, I am actually going on another podcast with a lawyer that specializes in mediation around conflict and animals. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm going to take that episode and include it in my podcast so you can all listen to it, because I think it's just a completely different dynamic when we have two people speaking together. Anyway, today's subject is very dear to my heart, and it's something I could go on about forever, which is there are two crucial subjects they don't teach in vet school. And the problem with not teaching these subjects, they can teach us everything else, right? All the medical knowledge, anatomy, physiology, all the surgery in the world. But if they don't teach these really important subjects, it ends up with a lot of it leaving the profession. We don't like being in it anymore because we don't have these really crucial skills. So I feel like it's almost like the vet schools are pouring new grads into these leaky buckets where they're leaving as fast as they come in because they don't have these skills that are so important in this industry. And I will keep bullying the vet schools until they implement them and at least set some time aside to do this. So what are they? The first one is people skills. And the second subject is emotional resilience. Basically, emotional resilience is how to overcome and grow stronger from the difficulties we have in life and in this profession. And obviously, my whole work, my podcast, my post, everything I do, my coaching evolves around the subject, right? Emotional resilience. I help you with tools so you can get much better at facing the difficulties in life and in this profession. But this podcast is, to an extent, going to make up for the lack of teaching of people skills that we don't have in vet school, and we don't really get taught anywhere else unless there's some random class in high school they told you about communication, right? So looking at people skills, when somebody says people skills to me, I just think it sounds really boring, and I don't really know what they mean. So I looked it up, and basically it encompasses communication, patience, empathy, and conflict resolution. And obviously, emotional resilience weaves into this because your people skills would be so much better when you feel confident, when you are a confident person, when you are patient, and when you just feel it comes easy to you to feel compassion because you are so open-minded and you're grounded in your own self, right? But I'm going to separate the emotional resilience bit for this episode just to make it easier, but just to make it simpler to understand the people skills side of it. So a book I really want to recommend that I have just read, which is written by the lawyer that's going to interview me on a podcast next month. Her name is Debra Voda-Hamilton. Say that quickly 3 times. And she wrote a book called Nipped in the Butt, not in the butt, which was really funny, I think. And it's basically about mediation to resolve conflict over animals. And I learned a lot in that I kind of knew, but hadn't been able to put words on it. And obviously, lawyer is amazing for that. So a lot of this podcast is going to be inspired in this book, and I'm going to put it in the show notes. Absolutely read it. It's fairly quick weekend read. I put it in my post as well, but I'll put it in the show notes for you. And one of the most essential skills when you have to deal with people is being able to listen. And listening is not just letting their words come into your ears. Active listening is listen without wanting to show off your skills and not wanting to be right straight away. So don't be inside your own head worried about how you're going to come across as soon as you answer. It's basically about putting the ego aside and be able to open up and be really curious about what is this person saying. And part of that is not assuming anything, because somebody says something to you, for example, oh, my dog is scratching, and we just straight away assume that this dog is going to have fleas, or it's probably got an allergy. And maybe what happened is they spilled I don't know, a bottle of some disinfectant on top of the dog, right? Like, so you can't assume anything just because they say something and your brain just wants to immediately get into, okay, I know what it is. And then you want to show off and you're like, oh, let me just check for fleas. And then you get really secretly happy when they have fleas because then you can show them, right? Do you know what I mean? So listen super open and don't assume anything about what they say. Like, keep being really curious and keep asking, tell me more about that. So can you tell me more? Yeah. Can you elaborate on that? Like, really keep asking to get down to the bottom exactly what they mean. Because when you're not active listening and you're just assuming and you're just like impatiently waiting for them to shut up so you can show how much you know and you can like tell them exactly what they need to do, the communication is just not going to be there. It's not going to flow, and they're not going to trust you and not going to feel heard. They don't care if you know everything. They don't care if you have all these skills. What they want is they care about being heard, right? And also, a thing I found that I've gotten much better at is, instead of trying to solve for the problem in your head as they are talking, if you just stop and just listen and get all the information, then when they stop talking, it's okay to stop yourself, like take a pause and think. Right? Instead of, it's like we have to show that we're so good at this and we're so capable that, oh, you stop talking and I straight know what the problem is, because chances are you don't. So I used to be like so quick in answering like just anything as soon as they owners would stop talking, because I wanted to show that I know this, right? To make them trust me. But that does not create trust. Trust is feeling heard and feeling understood. For example, I can't remember exactly what they asked the other day, but there was this case that it was pretty complicated. And I think the cat was on several drugs and it had been seen and then not seen. And the owners asked me something along the lines of, do you think it would have made a difference if X, Y, Z? And because it was pretty complicated, I didn't know straight away. And I stopped to listen exactly what he was asking. And then I just stopped. And I was looking up like this, just away from them a second. I was like, let me think about that. And it seems long. Now, when I'm stopping here on video for that long, it feels like I'm stopping for half an hour. It feels like I'm wasting everybody's time because I'm not talking, I'm not providing information, I'm not showing how much I know. But stopping and thinking shows that you're really thinking about it. You're really taking into consideration what they said. And owners really, really appreciate that. Like, well, everybody appreciates it. It's like my husband always complains that, you know, you serve some food and then as soon as they start eating it, like, oh, this is delicious. And you're like, you have not even had time to flavor, like to let the flavors penetrate your tongue. It's like in your mouth, like have a couple of bites and really savor it and then give your opinion on the food. But it's like we just want to give our opinion and we just want to show whatever we're feeling and thinking so quickly that we don't actually stop and think about it. And we don't stop to take in all the information before we come out with our judgment of the case, right? And the other skills that were mentioned is patience. And it's not that we are necessarily as vets impatient as, oh, let's just get it done. Let's just get it done. It's understanding, having a high understanding that the owners are really highly emotionally involved and they are not necessarily rational. So it's easy to feel impatient when they don't seem to understand something that is so like logic to us. And we can feel impatient with them because they don't seem to get, they're just not getting along. They don't catch up quickly enough. Like, we get impatient with them. There's a case where we had a Labrador come in, 9-year-old Labrador, and he was bleeding out. You know, when you just look at them and you know there's hemangiosarcoma in this dog from far away, right? But I had to show the owner because I can't just say I can smell it, right? And I might be wrong as well. So I quickly scanned the abdomen and there was no free fluid. And then we scanned the chest and it was just the weirdest chest I have ever seen in my whole life. So if you read any of my posts, you know that my ultrasound skills are not the best, but I was just like, this is weird and it's bad. Like, we're bleeding out and we're bleeding out in the chest. Whatever it is, a 9-year-old Labrador, this is not good. And the owner, he was not getting it. He was just like, okay, so now what? I'm like, do you want us to just do a quick x-ray so I can kind of show you, so you can kind of get on board with what I'm saying? And so we methadone this dog to its ears because it was panicking and it was painful and it was just not, it had to go, right? But this owner needed to understand what I was telling him. So we x-rayed the chest, and I said, I cannot tell you exactly what's going on, but one lung is like, that's just mass. There's blood everywhere in his chest, and I can't even see exactly what is going on with his heart, but his heart as well. There was just so many things going on, but he has masses that was bleeding out in his lungs, right? And he's like, okay, so what do we do next? And I was thinking, well, that's obviously nothing to do because he has no lungs left. What do you want? Like a lung transplant? That's not going to happen. You need to let him go. But he was so emotional involved. This was his best mate, and I had to like really slow down and be patient with the man. And I just kept the dog drugged so it wouldn't suffer while I kind of explained to him what was happening and what the outcome would likely be and why it was the best thing to let this dog go. But it can be difficult when it's something is so clear to us and they don't get it. Like, for example, when they don't finish the course of antibiotics because, oh, the dog was better, so I didn't finish it. And then we're like, and it's easy to get impatient and forget that when we explained whatever treatment to them, they were probably really emotional about the whole thing and probably didn't understand everything we said and didn't take it in because their brain is just like somewhere else, right? So patience is such an important people skill, and definitely something they don't teach us in vet schools. They just, like, you look at a textbook, you tell the owner this, and then they decide, and then you move along. And it's not like that. You really have to gauge where they at and be patient with them and have so much compassion for them as well, which is another people skill. When they are not the perfect pet parent, we need to have compassion towards them. I don't think we do have high expectations for pet owners. Like, they should be like textbook pet owners, right? So, and if they're not, then we can just not work with them. Then it's just too difficult and we can't help the pet, and it's terrible for the pet. And I have a really good example of this from a personal life, which is one of my best friends who goes to Muay Thai with me. She happens to be a therapist, and she works with kids that are juvenile delinquents, right? So young people under 17 that have done some really horrible things, and others just like they have stolen something and they can't go to prison. So she has to kind of deal with it and trying to get these kids on right course before they just, before they turn 18, and basically then will just go into the penitentiary system. And she has to be the one that goes out and speaks to the families and see how is the household, and and basically coach the parents on how they can help this kid along. And the way she explained it to me, 50% of those parents, they just have no clue. They're terrible parents. They don't know. They don't know any better. They don't listen to her advice. They don't set the boundaries she advises them to do. And it's just a disaster. But she doesn't go home, super angry and super worked up and like, all these kids I can't help, and, getting really angry at the parents. She's like, okay, I can only do my best. I will just put everything in. I understand these parents, they don't know any better because they were probably brought up in a way that was not ideal either. And she just does her best with what she's got. And I think we lack a bit of that. We think we are like, oh, well, if they didn't get it, then, it's their fault. The pet is not any better. Yeah, but also, we all come from different backgrounds. And just because they're not perfect, it doesn't mean we can't help the pet in some way or form. Being flexible and being compassionate and just like be able to sit back and not judge them so much, like sit on our high horse and feel like, oh, well, if you're not good enough, well, then it's not my problem. Another thing I think I would add in with people skills is honesty. Like, be empathetic, but say it as it is. Like, it really sucks to give bad news, but the bad thing, whatever it is the pet is going through, is going to happen whether you say it or not. That's not on you. You have to be able to say things that will make people sad because it is the truth. Like, be nice, but don't sugarcoat it. I had a cat coming in a few nights ago. I wrote a post about a 9-year-old Ginger, and he was absolutely gorgeous. And he came in and he had a blocked bladder. And as soon as I listened to him, his heart rate was 160, which is way lower than it should be, considering this is a stretched out, really painful cat. So I explained to the owner, I said, the problem is his bladder is blocked. It can be for these different motives. When the bladder is blocked, this happens to the electrolytes. The potassium is very likely high. He could have a heart attack and he could die in a moment. It's going to cost you probably over $1,000 to try and fix him, and you might not get your cat back. this is what we got. You need to make a decision quickly, you know, because he could kind of take it. He was a guy that was really down to earth and he could take it. If it had been someone a bit more sensitive, I might have been a bit more gentle, but he could take it. No, and I was just super honest. I said, I cannot guarantee you're going to get your cat back. And this is really bad. And I'm really glad I did, because then when the cat actually did go into cardiorespiratory arrest, as we were trying to, you know, get everything on him, and I phoned the owner, I was like, look, what I said, the worst case scenario happened, and it's happened. I'm really sorry. And next day when he came to pick the body up, he spoke to the nurses and he said like, oh, can you tell the vet that she was really lovely and she handled really well? I'm really grateful. This is for a cat that almost cost him $1,000, because we did all these things to try and save him, right? We still had to charge him. And he still picked up a dead cat. But because I was so honest with him and so clear, obviously having the compassion as well, but just like not sugarcoating it, he could make a decision really quickly and he completely understood what I was saying. Talking about people skills, I think a lot of us can have this thing. Well, I came into this profession because I love animals. Like, you cannot expect of me to have people skills. That's not like exactly, we don't get trained in it, right? So that is kind of like not my problem. But if you remember in the first episode, and if you haven't listened to it, I would really advise that you do, because I kind of lay the foundation of this whole coaching thing and how we face the world. If you remember, like the model I taught in the first episode, which is how you think and feel will determine the outcome. And I think in vet med, regardless of everything else, the desired outcome we want is the best treatment for the pet, like the best possible outcome for the pet. That has to be the outcome we go for. The outcome is not, oh, I felt great, or the outcome is not, oh, I really showed off my skills, or the outcome is not, I really showed the owners who was right? That should not be the outcome we want to go for. We want to make sure the pet is treated the best way possible, right? And avoid the suffering. So the model I explained in episode 1 is like, there's a circumstance. We have a thought about that circumstance. From that thought, we get a feeling, an emotion. Then we act with that feeling driving it. And then there's a consequence, a result of that. So let's say we have 2 different models, but with the same circumstance. Let's say the circumstance is the owner comes in and I'm like, I didn't finish the antibiotics because he got better. And you could think, and this is a choice, right? You can choose what to think. No matter what your brain presents you with, you can say, no, that's not what I want to think, and change it. But let's say your brain decides to present you with a thought, they're just careless and stupid. Easy to think, right? When they have not finished their course of antibiotic, which everybody knows, if you're medically trained, you should. So you think they're careless and stupid. And how does that make you feel? It's very likely to make you feel frustrated and annoyed. And now with this frustration and annoyance, you go into the consult with them and start speaking to them. And you're likely to be huffing and puffing. You're likely to use sarcasm because you're so annoyed. You might, in between talking to the client, you might talk to your coworkers in the back about them, like, oh God, they're so stupid, like really like bad-mouthing them kind of. Talking down to the clients and lecturing them. Well, let me explain you all about antibiotics, as we are, you know, talking like that because you're just really annoyed. And from a place of like, I know better. And you don't have really the patience for explaining because you think that they're just careless and stupid anyway. The result of that is going to be that the owners feel bad. They are not going to listen properly to you again. I know they didn't the first time, but because you're not acting like this is going to happen again, because now they're busy defending themselves. And because you're making them feel bad, they want to push the blame on someone else, which is likely to be you. And it's not ideal for the pet, right? Because now you have like a conflict. And it's going to be difficult to sit down and openly speak about, okay, so what's the best course of action going forward, and making sure the owners understand it. All because you thought they're careless and stupid. Okay, so the second model we could run with the choice of, I'm going to be patient, I'm going to be compassionate, I'm going to be, you know, open for communication, and I'm going to be honest. With those skills, you go in and then you might think, okay, they obviously misunderstood. Something was misunderstood here, right? No judging, just they misunderstood. Now the feelings you might have could be open and curious to like, what didn't I explain well, or what was happening in their brains that they didn't get it? Like, okay, let's try and find out in how many days, you know, being open and curious and just let's solve this problem together, kind of, right? And with that feeling and that thought driving it, then you ask questions. You know, you ask them exactly what made you think that you shouldn't give it, so you can correct this, right? But not from a place of blame and, you know, judging them. you can then take it down a level and make it even simpler, like explain the why about antibiotics, how antibiotics work. Again, like just maybe you didn't explain it well the first time. And you can work together with the owner to find a solution, because you make sure you do it in a way that they don't feel attacked. And now you're working together to find a solution. Then the consequence, the result of this model is going to be that the owners understand you much better, and the pet is going to get the right treatment now and in the future, because now you have an open communication and you're working together on it. And it will be like you can run a model for anything like this, any situation, anything anybody does, any client does. If you run a model and if the consequence was that it didn't really end very well and the clients got upset and you somehow you're like, why did this happen? I don't feel like we got anywhere, and now they're angry and the pet is not getting treated or whatever it is. Run a model, see what your thoughts were that made you act in the way you did. Because if that's driving your actions, they can feel it. They can feel it, and it's going to be a conflict. So what I mean by this is you might not want to learn people skills. You might just want to be super just medically trained and do your surgeries and just dive into this. But the problem is, if you don't address the people skills part of it, it's just not gonna work. You're gonna be limping along with it's like a car with the wheel missing, because that is such an important part of the treatment, is working with the people, and working with them, and for you to feel good as well by not having these stressful conflicts coming along all the time. Look at me. I basically almost spent £1,000 on a cat that died the way I had explained to the owner was going to die, and he still complimented me, right? It could have been a complaint, right? And it did not become one because of my people skills. But so obviously, to be honest, now I'm a coach, I've been training for a few years. And so I have people skills on the steroids. And it does mean that I have so much more fun in consults, because I'm not sitting there worrying about what they're going to think about me. How can I show them I'm right? I literally do not care what they think about me. We had a guy in the other day that the dog had a stomach ulcer, we diagnosed. And he had finished the meloxicam, I think, on a Saturday, and I saw it on a Thursday. So 6 days had passed, and I did all the tests on this dog, and I imaging and the whole history. I literally grilled this guy to get all the history. And I said to him in the end, the only explanation I can find is that for some reason he reacted to the meloxicam, and it's a delayed reaction. I can't explain exactly why with the prostaglandins and everything, but whatever. And he's like, I'm not buying it, this and the other. And I'm like, fine, it doesn't matter. We just need to treat him. So send him home with the treatments. And then obviously he went to speak to his mate, right? Because I think it was a Staffy, and it was a show dog. So obviously he knows a lot of people in the industry that knows a lot. And they were like, oh, why didn't she give it a blood transfusion? And why this and why that? And he actually came in, he just came by to buy some dog food, some gastrointestinal, whatever, and spoke to my nurse, who is male, and who's really good at handling people, because he also has a side business. And he was able to take this guy, and he just spent half an hour speaking to him, because we had the time, explaining again what I had explained, but in another way, that this guy understood it better. He clicked with him because of male to male. And that doesn't affect me at all. My ego is not hurt by this guy didn't understand me. I'm not married to this guy. I do not need him to like me or to understand everything I say. My only concern is that this dog gets the treatment it needs, and that he comes back for the revision because he trusts us, right? And my nurse made sure of that. I was like, do you want to speak to him? No. So a people skill can also be seeing okay, so maybe my cultural background, or because I'm a woman, or whatever it is, this guy, for whatever reason, is just he's not taking it in. There's some block there. I felt there was a block in the consult, and be happy to then, via other ways, getting someone else to explain it that he might click more with. And that is being humble as well, which is another skill, right? And that comes back to the emotional resilience I talk about, where you're confident enough to do that you don't make it mean anything about you, that you have someone else to come in and explain it. And nurses are amazing at explaining things. A lot of them have much better skills than us, because they deal so much with clients in a day-to-day basis. So what I want to say is the more you work on these skills, the more you are likely to succeed as a vet, have fun as a vet, have more spectacular cases, have more clients thanking you, complimenting you, baking you brownies, having fun, and basically staying in vet med because you feel like this is flowing and this is nice. You can choose not to work on the skills, and you're totally free to do that, but the consequences are there, right? And I think if just vet schools could actually implement these subjects and teach it in a way that we could just like at least have some basic understanding before we go out there and deal with people, we wouldn't have such a leaky bucket of vets falling out of holes, you know, in the profession. And as always, coaching for this is amazing. If you have blind spots where you don't realize how you are creating conflict with people, or how the way you are behaving is making it hard for people to connect with you, like, coaching is amazing for this, because a coach will be the one person that will tell you the truth and will go through a case with you and show you where your blind spots were and what you could have said different and how you interpreted things and how you actually made things mean something about you, and then you were resentful towards the client and created a situation. So as always, I am still taking one-on-one clients, and I'd love to work with you and teach you all the people skills that I have learned, and you can implement them. So it's literally a session a week, and then you go out and you implement the skills, and you will just see a change. It's amazing. Like, I used to be so scared and so nervous and just have like so many negative feelings around people, and just like having these people skills has just changed my life as a vet. As you know, I burned out for a year, and when I came back after coaching, I came back and hit the ground running. I've had so much fun since, and it's just not the same. It's not the same without the people skills, and it's a real shame it doesn't get taught in vet school and even earlier, because it's something we all need if we're in the service industry. That was all for today. If you love this podcast, please share with a friend that might need it, you know, review it, send me a message. You can do that on the platform. Send me a message on social media, and make sure you follow me on social media as well, so you can see all the little posts I put up and all the little things I kind of teach along the way that are very like supplementary to this podcast. All the best. Have a lovely rest of the week. Bye.